They called her Miss Denise, not Denise Jenkins, not Denise from accounting, not Mrs. Jenkins as she preferred, just Miss Denise, the janitor. Every morning at precisely 5:45, long before the office lights flickered on and the sales team began boasting about their latest deals, Denise was there. Her cleaning cart squeaked quietly through the large glass doors of Creswell Holdings. She wore the same pale gray uniform she'd donned for years, and her worn sneakers marked her quiet steps down every hallway. For 15 years, Denise had been picking up crumpled napkins from conference rooms, collecting gum wrappers from break room floors, and wiping away fingerprints from elevator buttons that nobody else seemed to notice. To most people working there, Denise blended seamlessly into the background, practically invisible. If she was in the room, they talked around her, through her, as if she wasn't even there. Only newcomers, such as interns or temporary workers, hadn't yet learned the office culture of ignoring her completely, occasionally offering a polite greeting. Initially, Denise harbored no bitterness. She simply lowered her head and quietly listened. She overheard cruel jokes, careless conversations, and lies told openly, believing she wasn't listening. She remembered everything, meticulously cataloging each moment. Once, a senior employee deliberately left a half-eaten sandwich resting precariously on the edge of a trash bin rather than discarding it properly. Denise silently picked it up and threw it away. The man walked past her without thanks, coldly instructing, "Make sure the carpet's dry before the meeting at 3." Denise smiled quietly and nodded. The following day, the same man spilled coffee on that carpet and chastised her for not cleaning it properly. Denise again quietly nodded. Another time, she overheard Douglas Fairbanks, a loud and ostentatious vice president, mockingly say, "Can you imagine working here your entire life and not even having a desk?" Denise overheard but showed no reaction. He didn't know who she was. None of them did. They had no idea Denise actually held more power within that building than anyone else. But she hadn't yet told a soul. It wasn't time. Before Denise picked up the mop, she had sat in a small kitchen in Columbus, Georgia, alongside her husband, Roland Jenkins, mapping out business plans. Back then, Creswell Holdings didn't even have a name, just a scribbled idea on the back of a grocery receipt. Roland had ambition. He understood logistics thoroughly, and Denise stood behind the scenes, carefully managing every cent. In 1998, Roland and his partner Curtis Banning established Creswell Holdings. Denise was the first investor, using a small inheritance from her father. She intentionally stayed behind the scenes. Tragically, Roland died in a car accident in 2004. Soon after, Curtis swiftly erased Roland and Denise's presence in the company, assuming she would vanish quietly. But Denise was prepared. She held all the legal proof of Roland's ownership shares. She didn't act immediately. Instead, she patiently waited. In 2007, Denise quietly returned to Creswell as a night janitor. Curtis never recognized her. Over the next 15 years, she meticulously documented every wrongdoing, every instance of disrespect, every breach of ethics within the company. One evening, after picking up a discarded birthday cake slice intentionally left on the floor, CEO Thomas Wexler sneered, "You missed a spot." At that moment, Denise knew her time had come. That night, she accessed company records, collecting damning evidence. The following morning, upon seeing coworker Cynthia weeping after being denied leave to visit her injured son, Denise called her lawyer, Elliot Miles. "It's time," she said decisively. Within 48 hours, Denise entered the shareholders' meeting wearing a sharp navy suit instead of her old uniform. Wexler and Curtis froze in disbelief as Elliot announced Denise as the majority shareholder. She moved slowly around the boardroom, meeting each person's eyes, declaring, "For 15 years, you've treated me like I didn't exist. Today, I'll show you who truly runs this company." Immediately, Wexler was fired. Those who had contributed to wrongdoing quietly departed. Denise vowed to transform the company, starting by listening to those previously ignored. In her first week, Denise gathered all employees. She announced significant reforms, reinstating overtime, healthcare benefits, and reviewing unjust terminations. Positive changes swiftly reshaped company morale. Still, some asked, "Why wait so long?" Denise always responded firmly but gently, "Real power only makes a difference when used at precisely the right moment." Denise's story wasn't merely about corporate transformation. It was a profound lesson on human dignity, that the person cleaning the floors might very well hold the keys to the entire building. Denise began her work quietly, never drawing unnecessary attention. She carefully assessed every department and listened to everyone, from warehouse workers to entry-level clerks, taking mental notes of who genuinely cared and who was merely pretending. But this was just the beginning. When news of the sudden leadership change reached the lower floors, whispers filled the halls. Employees exchanged confused glances, uncertain about the future. But one thing was clear: things would never be the same at Creswell Holdings. In her new office, Denise looked around at the room previously occupied by Wexler. Everything appeared untouched, pristine, distant, a symbol of power disconnected from reality. Denise slowly opened the large windows, letting fresh air flood the room, symbolically clearing away years of neglect and corruption. She then summoned Cynthia to her office. When Cynthia entered, she hesitated at the threshold, as if she didn't belong. Denise motioned her warmly inside, asking her gently about her son. "He's doing better," Cynthia replied softly. "But why am I here? I mean, in your office?" Denise smiled kindly, placing a reassuring hand on Cynthia's shoulder. "Because," she said softly, "this office is no longer a place reserved for a privileged few. It's now open to everyone who has built this company, one invisible act of hard work at a time. Starting today, you'll manage the entire janitorial division, Cynthia. You're going to help rebuild the dignity that has long been overlooked here." Cynthia's eyes welled up with tears, overwhelmed by the acknowledgement. For years, she had felt invisible, just like Denise. Now finally, someone saw her clearly. Meanwhile, in the upper floors, the remaining senior executives began strategizing quietly. Some welcomed the change, relieved that honesty and fairness might finally prevail. Others, those who had thrived in the previous toxic environment, resented this sudden loss of privilege. Among them was Meredith Chandler. Meredith, a vice president known for her cold efficiency, openly challenged Denise at every turn. During an executive meeting, she stood up aggressively and demanded, "How do you expect to run this company without proper business credentials? You were a janitor, not an executive." Denise calmly leaned forward, addressing Meredith directly but with remarkable gentleness. "Meredith, leadership isn't defined by the titles we've held or the diplomas we've earned. True leadership emerges from our ability to listen, our willingness to act, and above all, our courage to stand up for what's right. Perhaps if previous management understood this, I wouldn't need to sit here today." Meredith fell silent, unable to respond. The room erupted in quiet applause, executives quietly acknowledging Denise's strength and sincerity. Over the following weeks, Denise tirelessly met with each department. She visited warehouses, offices, and delivery points, often working late into the night, taking notes and understanding every operation from the inside out. Employees quickly noticed that Denise genuinely listened, not just to supervisors, but to the workers themselves. She introduced a revolutionary change, a monthly open forum called Speak Up Sessions, where any employee could directly raise concerns or suggest improvements. The first session was hesitant, marked by silence and skepticism, but slowly, courage emerged. Alonzo, a delivery driver known for his straightforwardness, stood up bravely, asking, "Does this mean we'll finally get our overtime pay restored?" Denise nodded reassuringly. Not only restored Alonzo, but paid retroactively for every hour missed. The room erupted in cheers, disbelief turning to gratitude. In another session, Deborah from HR nervously asked about healthcare improvements. Denise smiled warmly, promising immediate action to find new providers offering better coverage at lower costs. Again, the employees cheered. Trust was gradually rebuilding. Yet Denise understood that deep wounds needed more than temporary fixes. She summoned Elliot to assist in an internal audit. Every financial report, every contract, every managerial decision from the last decade was meticulously examined. The revelations were staggering: fraudulent bonuses, concealed accidents, countless injustices against loyal employees. Every discovery was painful, a harsh reminder of the moral bankruptcy that had seeped into the company's culture. Yet Denise remained resolute. With every truth uncovered, she took steps not merely to punish wrongdoing, but to rebuild trust. One afternoon, Denise gathered the employees in the courtyard. Without banners, speeches, or formalities, she simply stood among them, sharing pizza, laughter, and candid conversations. Employees who previously saw her as invisible now approached warmly, sharing their stories, hopes, and even fears. The true transformation wasn't merely administrative, it was human. In the following months, productivity surged. Morale, once shattered, soared higher than ever. Even Wall Street noticed, citing Creswell Holdings as an unprecedented case study in organizational turnaround. However, Denise knew her mission wasn't yet complete. The ghost of the past, Curtis Banning, requested a meeting. He arrived visibly humbled, cautiously greeting Denise. "I misjudged you, Denise," he admitted softly. "I underestimated you all those years ago." Denise regarded him calmly, without resentment. "Curtis, we all choose how we treat others. You chose wrongly. But you also taught me a valuable lesson. Patience and humility hold more power than arrogance ever could. Consider your debt paid, not to me, but to yourself. Go forward with kindness." And Curtis left quietly, visibly moved by her generosity. Finally, Denise gathered the employees once more for an anniversary celebration marking 1 year since her leadership began. She invited May, a young intern whom she had personally mentored, onto the stage. May nervously but earnestly spoke into the microphone, her voice strong and clear. "Ms. Denise taught me something I'll never forget. Leadership isn't about holding power, but about empowering others. Thanks to her, I stand here today believing that everyone, no matter their position, can create real change." Applause filled the courtyard, echoing in waves. Denise quietly stepped aside, allowing May and the others to shine, proud that her real victory wasn't merely in firing a corrupt CEO, but in inspiring those who had felt powerless. That evening, as Denise closed her office for the last time, preparing to pass leadership on to May, she left a note on the desk for the incoming CEO,